you're on Initiative Africa. My name is Asha Samput. Welcome to this new edition of your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. We meet Captain Clément Arboy. He's the commander of the French corvette Le Champlain. His vessel was called last August to the scene of the sinking of the Japanese bulk carrier Wakashio, which ran aground in the southeast of Mauritius with a cargo of hydrocarbons. An emergency situation in line with the pollution control mission of his crew. He's our guest this week.
Finally, on Tuesday morning we arrived in the area in front of the Wakashio wreck. At sunrise, we were able to carry out various investigations, first with our boats as close as possible to the wreckage, and also by using a drone to investigate the various cracks and the hydrocarbon flows.
How to improve educational systems and measure their progress. The NGO Aide et Action and the AFD, the French Development Agency, have decided to take stock of their support programs in West Africa.
Children who didn't even know how to write started writing, and we could really see how that did them good.
Preparing and training a new African elite is the battle being waged by many private schools on the continent. I invite you to discover this new educational trend.
Thanks to their time here in Morocco, we believe that our students will find it easy to fit in and to be productive in Moroccan companies based in Dakar and certainly West African countries.
All over the world, reforming education systems is a challenge. In West Africa, the decentralization of education is a difficult reform to implement for local actors. For several years, the NGO Aide et Action has been assisting some countries in the region with targeted operations. A qualitative evaluation of one of its flagship programs, Padoué, was carried out by an independent firm to measure its impact. We had followed this fascinating and uncompromising assessment. Take a look.
It is time to take stock of the program for improving and diversifying the educational offer in West Africa, known as the Padoué. While the region is in a phase of decentralization of education, where the transfer of skills is a major issue, the program, funded by the French Development Agency and implemented by the NGO Aide et Action, is in its third phase in 8 African countries. It's an extensive program targeting nearly 550,000 students.
In this program, everything depends on the quality of education, especially anything to do with the development of school project. Then there is another axis, which concerns all that is the development of educational alternatives, to give more chances to those excluded from the system and to those who are not at school, so that they can make sure that they too can have access to and benefit from educational offers. And the last one that is important is to develop cross-border action. And then the third axis is a little advocacy, working with civil society organizations to influence educational policy so as to make the best use of the innovations and good practices developed by the program.
The evaluation mission carried out by independent experts from the Casinos company shows that education has become a priority in local action plans at community level in the 8 countries covered by the program.
With the Padoué program, the synergy between the local elected representatives and those involved in the decentralized structures of the ministry has been greatly enhanced. In any case, at home in Benin, it was always difficult to have meetings or brainstorming between school officials and mayors, where the mayor would bluntly state, "If the meeting's there, I'm not coming." That's something that has changed a lot.
And what are the first fruits of this synergy? The acceleration of one of Padoué's missions, training to enable teachers to better learn and pass on active educational techniques.
The gym activity is based on a particular story. It is a form of gymnastics that we do with the children. We tell a story, and from that story, the children move around according to the ideas they get from the story.
In Benin, the Alomé School, 180 kilometers from the capital, Cotonou, is one of the institutions that has set up school government, where pupils are the ministers, with good results based on individual initiative, collective behavior, and even the upkeep of the premises.
Our school was not so clean before, but now it's clean.
The children became aware of themselves, you could say. In the past, their games were very rough. So with the responsibility of having this new authority, they are now keeping an eye on each other. And they're educating each other too. They know they can no longer play such brutal games, as they are punishable by law.
For the evaluators, social mobilization helped to increase access to education, and also the number of schools in the 8 countries. Girls were more likely to attend schools, with particular progress in Niger. As for the youngsters between the ages of 9 and 14 who were not attending school, initiatives to improve the possibility of alternative education were achieved by the creation of second chance schools.
Children who didn't even know how to write started writing, and we could really see how that did them good.
Padoe has also greatly improved the perception of education among local communities. NGOs and those involved with education are coming out of the program with strengthened capacities.
The stakeholders were trained through participation, not just theory, so it became clear to us what each could contribute to building up the quality of education and to consensually manage the education in the schools.
But in several countries, political and administrative instability as well as strikes have delayed Padoe's progress. A lack of financing in some communities hampers the teaching initiative. Some of the projects may not survive the lack of resources, such as here at the Zigné Fangé School, 240 kilometers from Cotonou.
We had problems. The water. We don't have water for the flowers. The fences, too. Often the sheep get in and wipe everything out, and especially the tool. We don't have tools to tie the posts together.
The
lesson that can be learned is that Padoe could have had a stronger impact. If the funding of school projects had been effective and more had been available for the participants at a local community level. So for the future, it's important to really work on the sustainable mechanisms for funding the school project.
13 years after it began, Padoe has made good progress in improving the educational system across 8 countries in West Africa. But understanding the regionalization of education, community empowerment, and the establishment of sustainable financing mechanisms will take time. For the 550,000 children that the program has reached, and for their parents, as well as for their teachers, this is a journey that is just beginning.
Our guest this week is Captain Clément Arboy. He's one of the guardians of the health of our oceans. Last August, his vessel, the French corvette Le Champlain, arrived with 15 tons of equipment to assist the wreck of the Wakashio, a Japanese bulk carrier wrecked in the southeast of Mauritius. I met the commander of the corvette in Réunion Island, and he explained to me the difficult context of the oil spill, complicated by unusual conditions there. Listen to him. Hello, Captain Clément Arboy. You are the commander of the Champlain. On August 8, 2020, you were called to the scene of the sinking of the Wakashio off the Mauritian coast. What did you notice when you arrived?
Le 8 août, nous avons appareillé de...
On August 8th, we set sail from Réunion Island with 15.5 tons of equipment on board Le Champlain for Mauritius.
Le dimanche 9 à Port-Louis pour débarquer.
We then arrived on Sunday 9th in Port Louis, the capital, to unload the equipment. 15 tons of materials, which were mainly anti-pollution booms, skimmers, a lot of material to help the personnel on land in particular, plus 10 sailors from the naval base and the command unit of the South Indian Ocean Zone to help the Mauritians in the area and to directly intervene on the beaches and oil slicks.
After
unloading this equipment in Port Louis, we set sail again to go directly to the area. It took us 2 days to get there because we had to take shelter due to the weather conditions. Finally, on Tuesday morning we arrived in the area in front of the Wakashio wreck. At sunrise, we were able to carry out various investigations, first with our boats as close as possible to the wreckage, and also by using a drone to investigate the various cracks and the hydrocarbon flows. Our staff investigated the damage with our boats, which was also confirmed by the drone images. We observed various oil leaks, which continued both through the starboard and the porthole of the boat, as well as significant cracks on the hull at the level of the conning tower of the vessel. After these investigations in the afternoon, together with the Mauritian authorities, we placed booms to contain the hydrocarbons at the level of the ship. These booms were put in place at the end of the afternoon so that we could intervene overnight the next day.
What was Champlain's main mission?
Le Champlain's primary mission could indeed be described in 2 phases. The first phase, the priority mission, was to bring this material, as well as the experts and the competent personnel from the anti-pollution unit from our naval base, as quickly as possible to the Mauritian authorities. A mission which was carried out extremely fast, because we received the order on Friday at the end of the afternoon, and we succeeded to embark on Saturday morning, with all the personnel as well as the material to set sail for Mauritius. With the first mission carried out, the second part of the mission was, with the resources of Le Champlain, to be able to provide an appraisal on the area, plus an assessment of the oil discharged into the sea, as well as an evaluation of the condition of the hull. This was the second mission of the Champlain, and this mission was carried out by using our boats as well as our drones and our aerial vectors, without forgetting a team on board of the wrecked vessel, and hence we managed to observe the various cracks, the condition of the hull, made an assessment of the degradation, and the work of the civilian crews on board, who were responsible for pumping the rest of the oil that was inside the Wakashio. During this phase, we were able to anchor near the wreckage to serve as a forward base ship for these various means.
What were the challenges encountered?
The primary difficulty for the Champlain in this type of operation was in fact related to the location of the wreck. The Champlain vessel is equipped to intervene in pollution control events, mostly in the high seas. In this case, we had a wreck which was partly in the sea and partly on a coral reef. Hence, the Champlain could not get as close as possible to implement dispersant and pollution control booms. Consequently, we had to drop this material on land and use our specialized teams to do work from the ground. The Champlain's several boats have been able to help set up dams and booms to contain the oil.
What about Réunion? The island was not affected by risk of oil spill at that time?
In view of the predictions made by various weather systems in France and by monitoring the meteorological environment in the area, as well as the study of currents, there were no risks at that time. I mean pollution risks towards Réunion. It turns out that the currents generally tend to go west and with Mauritius, which is to the north of Réunion. There was very little chance of ending up with pollution on the beaches here. However, Réunion's anti-pollution resources were ready to intervene on the orders of the government delegate, in other words, the préfet, to implement a Palmer-Terre plan in conjunction with a Palmer protocol if necessary.
As commander of the Champlain on this specific mission, where do you stand today? Does this mission continue? Is it over? What are the final results?
Alors, à l'issue de cette
At the end of the assessment, a thorough study of the situation and the installation of the various booms, after a week, the Champlain was disengaged from the area to return to Réunion, which led to the end of this mission. However, there were still teams from the naval base, almost 10 people, who continued to work very closely with the Mauritian teams in the area for several weeks. We continued providing the French expertise in terms of anti-pollution, while Le Champlain had gone on another mission under French sovereignty in the scattered islands.
Just a quick word about the collaboration with Mauritius. Do you have any programs, projects where you work together with the Mauritian authorities?
Alors, actuellement, Le Champlain se trouve.
Well, currently, Le Champlain is in Mauritius under a major technical shutdown. It is being repaired in shipyards in Mauritius because we do not have a basin in Réunion. There are cooperation agreements between Mauritius and France, which today, due to COVID, are more complicated to implement, but which obviously, once this complicated situation will be behind us, will allow to cooperate again.
Permettront d'être mis en œuvre.
Welcome back to the second part of our show. Many African countries are committed to providing international quality education to their students. In this race for excellence, institutions are making every effort to offer the future African elite content as compelling as in the best European or American schools. Example here in Morocco, where ISAIAM, the High Institute of Applied Computer Science and Management, welcomes students from all over the continent. Take a look.
Agadir on the Atlantic coast in southern Morocco. The city has always been known as the gateway to the desert. It is also home to a very special school. ISAIAM, the School of Management and Applied Computing, takes in young Moroccans as well as students from across Africa.
I'm Togolese. I'm Senegalese. I'm Malian.
I am from Senegal.
I'm Ivorian.
The establishment was founded just over 20 years ago and now has 400 students from 15 different countries. The school's mission is to provide Africa's future elite with the very best education and, equally important, an awareness of the world at large.
Today's world is one of globalization and exchange. School prepares you for that. The student isn't going to learn to be open to others out there in the business world. We want to help the student develop the notion of knowledge as a concept, as a technique. We want to develop know-how, and that's where the training courses, conferences with company bosses, and visits to businesses come in. And finally, we want to help the student know how to be, develop the personality side.
It's true that there are good schools in Senegal, but in my subjects, marketing and communication, it's a good idea to discover other schools further afield. Then there are exchanges happening between the students and the teachers.
The program is made up of courses in traditional subjects such as accountancy, management, and computing that last 3 to 5 years. Apart from the studies, a major challenge facing many students is adapting to life in a new country.
At first I felt a bit stressed, leaving your family, being far from home, but it's all right now. It's familiar. I'm a Muslim and the culture here, well, there's not much different as it is all Africa.
Fortunately, I managed to fit in and get an apartment right away. It went very well, to be honest.
In the first week, there's an induction day for new students. That helps them fit in, both in the country and in the school.
The school fees and accommodation in Agadir cost around $6,000 a year. A financial sacrifice that is worth making, according to this student from the Ivory Coast.
ECIAM is a private university. In general, most of the public universities we have attended are undermined by strikes. Nowadays, politics and universities go hand in hand.
It is now increasingly common for students to dream of returning home to pursue a career.
The education you get here, especially in management, is acknowledged internationally. You are taught the basics you will need to work in companies. Later, I'd like to work in finance for a company back home in Senegal.
I intend to get my degree and go to Canada. Then I'll probably go back home to contribute some manpower.
Another trump card the directors of the establishment have up their sleeve is Morocco itself. The kingdom is in the middle of a development boom and presents many career opportunities for motivated students.
Thanks to their time here in Morocco, we believe that our students will find it easy to fit in and to be productive in Moroccan companies based in Dakar and certainly West African countries.
Thanks to this South-South education, many more young students can contemplate a career on the continent. But if this trend is to take root, African administrations and companies will have to modify their own employment practices. What you know should be more important than who you know. A meritocracy would also be the solution to the brain drain and youth unemployment.
Let's listen to the second part of Captain Clément Arboy's interview this week. He goes back to the Palmer anti-pollution plan adopted after the sinking of the oil supertanker Amoco Cadiz in the 70s and told me about the specificities of his ship, Le Champlain, a very efficient multi-mission vessel. Listen to him. Let's now talk about the Palmer maritime pollution plan in which your vessel, Le Champlain, is involved. How does it work?
The Palmer Protocol was created in 1978 at the end of the Amoco Cadiz disaster on the Brittany coast, which had spilled more than 200,000 tons of fuel oil, which is almost 200 to 400 times more that has been caused here by the Wakashio, just to give you a scale. This Palmer plan consists of several elements: material, human, and a chain of command. On the material aspect, we find within the Palmer Maritime Pollution Protocol various vectors of the National Navy, specialized in the fight against pollution in the high seas. In particular, we can find support and assistant vessels overseas, such as Le Champlain, but also other types of vessels in metropolitan France. Lots of material stored on land, booms and skimmers, that will store the oil, pumps and handles for vacuuming. Also the human force, personnel trained specifically in the fight against pollution. In Réunion, for example, we have a team of around 10 people at the naval base, which is specifically trained in pollution control and capable of intervening, as we have seen on the Wakashio from the Champlain and/or from land. Finally, a chain of command which is implemented according to the different zones, whether in metropolitan France or overseas, through the person of the préfet maritime or the préfet on land in metropolitan France and Réunion. Also, the government delegate, who is also the préfet, who will be able, within the framework of the action of the government at sea, to regroup all the means at his level and therefore to be able to take the economic, political, technical decisions on the ground based on various experts. Whether experts from the Center for Documentation, Research and Experimentation on Accidental Water Pollution, or experts in other units about the fight to be waged and its effectiveness.
All of this would be impossible without precisely these overseas support and assistance vessels like the Champlain. The ship's designation is Bâtiment Multimission, B2M in French, meaning multi-mission vessel, and sometimes dubbed the Swiss Army knife of the Navy. What are the specificities of the vessel?
Overseas support and assistance vessels based in Réunion, New Caledonia and Polynesia have various missions. They do have a mission related to marine pollution, but ultimately that only represents a small part of those missions that we train for each year, and for which we hope will never be needed. We also have a larger range of missions, in particular, everything related to the surveillance of maritime approaches and the protection of French exclusive economic zones, which are numerous. We have the second largest exclusive economic zone in the world, with 11 million square kilometers and a large area, particularly in the Indian Ocean with the Mozambique Channel, the scattered islands, but also all the French southern lands and the cold Antarctic lands in the south of the area. A safeguard and assistance mission, of course, which is a mission carried out by all the boats of the French Navy at sea. For the Champlain, a large part of its mission is mainly logistics and supply to the scattered islands, which can be time-consuming and for which we embark materials that have to be deposited on the different islands.
Precisely, how are the missions organized? They are so diverse, ranging from pollution to sovereignty, including assistance to people. Is there pressure on life on board? How many sailors? How to give meaning to life on board?
Le Champlain est un bâtiment optimisé.
The Champlain is an optimized vessel with 23 sailors on board. This optimization allows us to carry out all our missions without difficulty. We have young sailors and older sailors with a lot of experience that they obviously share. We therefore carry out training on a very regular basis to achieve a level of qualification that helps us to perform all of these missions. There is no specific pressure to do this job. We are seafarers and we carry out all of these missions at the same time without difficulty. Sometimes there may be a little more pressure in the middle of actions, but the combined experience of the various sailors who are on board makes our missions successful.
Precisely, you live here in Rainian Island in the Indian Ocean. What's your relationship with the African continent?
Unfortunately, in this period of COVID, I have not yet had the opportunity to make stops in both Mauritius and Madagascar, so my relationship with the African continent is quite inexistent right now. What I do know is that there are many cooperation agreements between France and the riparian states, and for Champlain in particular. This consists mainly with Madagascar and the Madagascar Navy in providing equipment and supplying diesel. During our supply tour of the scattered islands, we also seized the opportunity to regularly take humanitarian freight provided by non-governmental organizations, who might sometimes take advantage of our vessel to support certain populations of Madagascar.
How do you see the evolution of your missions in the light of the changes happening in Africa at the moment? Crime, smuggling, terrorism. A quick word on these.
Well, in this context, the Champlain's missions are logistical, and some missions are in the Mozambique Channel, where we have French possessions. Within the framework of maritime surveillance by the Champlain, the evolution of the current context, if there is any kind of evolution, it will surely consist in a more heightened surveillance by the vessel in the area.
To conclude, can you tell us where are you going next with the Champlain, your next stops, your next missions?
My next mission will take place in two stages. The first, a patrol mission in the Mozambique Channel and surveillance of the area. A second operation linked to the supply tour in the scattered islands. A tour that lasts about 3 weeks and which takes us through Juan de Nova, Europa and the Glorieuses.
Thank you, Captain Clément Arboy, for your time.
Avec plaisir.
Well, that's it. Initiative Africa is over for today. You can, of course, find Captain Clément Arboy's interview and the replay of our programs on our website, africaonair.com. And, of course, you can also find us on all our social media channels. Feel free to share, like, and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa TV show. And do not forget, next week, same time, same channel, I'll see you again with a new edition of Business Africa. Have a great week, everyone, and goodbye.